Welcome to the Muntz Library tutorial series, Introduction to Reference Sources. This quick tutorial will introduce you to the indexes and show you how to use various reference indexes. Just like the index at the back of a book, a reference index works the same way. The index at the back of a book tells you where very specific information can be found within the entire book. Well, a reference index, such as the New York Times Index, shows you where specific information can be found amongst all the years and issues of the New York Times. Because different indexes index different items, such as the New York Times Index versus the London Times Index, the London Times newspaper is set up differently than the New York Times newspaper. So of course the indexes would look and function differently. But that's okay, as long as you remember that there is always a guide or instruction on how to use that index, either at the beginning or the end of the index. So let's start by looking at the New York Times Index for 1922. First, we start by looking at the How to Use the Index page. Not all help pages are labeled so clearly, and some are not in the front of the volume, but will be in the front of the first volume of the set. Here, we can see that they're telling us how to use the index, such as at the very first paragraph it says, in each entry the date is given, then the number of the page, followed by a colon and the number of the column. The columns are understood to be numbered 1 to 8 from left to right. Monday, March 13th, page 1, column 8, refers to the 8th column of the first page of the issue of the Times of March 13th. That's pretty easy to understand once you start looking at the entries. Also note the key to abbreviations as well. So now let's look for Mark Twain. When we get to the entry for Twain, Mark, it says C. Clemens, Samuel. This is known as a cross-reference and is common and beneficial in research. You will run into this if your author has a pseudonym. So we back up to the page for Clemens, Samuel. Notice in the entry is a brief synopsis and the info for March 21st, 1922, page 25, column 5. Now, for our library, you would go pull the microfilm reel for that date, run it through the microfilm machine, and read the entire entry. But don't worry, we will tackle the microfilm machine in another tutorial. It's actually quite fun. Now let's look at another type of index called a cumulative index. A cumulative index basically is an index to either an entire collection or an index for a certain number of years. And yes, there can be a cumulative index for a set number of years of an index set, such as the New York Times Cumulative Index for 1901 to 1950 index. So you would go to the cumulative index to find the dates and times that your person was in from 1901 to 1950, which is actually easier than going to each year individually. Depending on how the indexes are arranged, you might be given all of the information in the cumulative index, or just a list of years that your person was in, and then you would pull the index for that year and look them up. The index shown is a cumulative index for a series called Contemporary Authors. This book sounds like it might just be the cumulative index for the Contemporary Authors series, but really is a cumulative index for a reference book publisher called Gale. So this index basically indexes a huge majority of their publications. As seen in the picture, this is one page of the list of Gale resources this book indexes. I call this my cheater book because I can look up my author and find them in a massive number of reference sets instead of having to go to each set individually. So if we looked up Mark Twain in this index, we will see that he is in the Dictionary of Literary Biography, noted here as the DLB, Volume 11, and the 20th Century Literary Criticism, noted as TCLC, Volumes 6, 12, 19, 36, 48, and 59. We will talk about the 20th Century Literary Criticism set in a later tutorial on literary criticism indexes, and the Dictionary of Literary Biography in another tutorial known for the Dictionary of Literary Biography. Okay. We have discussed newspaper indexes and cumulative indexes. Now we will move on to periodical indexes. These really were the databases of the day. Just like a database will collect journal articles from periodicals and give you citations of articles that your topic appears in, the periodical indexes do the same thing, just not as fast, and they don't give you the full text. Really, they are a guide to articles on your topic. After this, you should really appreciate what a database does for you. Let's start with the 19th Century Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature of Great Upper Standing in the Literature World of Knowledge. Okay, you can see the real title, and I was only kidding. A bit of library humor, I just couldn't resist that one. First, let's look at the list of periodicals indexed. Just like databases only have certain journals in them, so do periodical indexes. This is by no means all the ones listed, it's just the first page. Again, we start by looking for Mark Twain and find he is listed under Clemens, Samuel. Once we get to Clemens Samuel, we see that he is in several, and let's look at the first one. Title of the article is Czar's Soliloquy in the North American Review. We know this by referring to the list of periodicals indexed in the front of the book. From May of 1917, issue number 205, pages 775 to 780. From here, you would find out if we have that journal here on microfilm, print, or anywhere. It could even be in a database. And go from there. Similar to the 19th Century Reader's Guide is the Humanities Index, which indexes a different set of journals, and the Pools Index to Periodical Literature, which indexes yet another set of periodicals. The last index we're going to talk about are book review indexes. These will provide very handy in tracking the critical reception. These work like a periodical index, just that they are only indexing book reviews. The one seen here is the Combined Retrospective Index to Book Reviews in Scholarly Journals, 1886 to 1974. It's quite a huge range of span of time there. It is 21 pages of scholarly journals that it indexes, but let me assure you, these are not all of them. Note that this is an author index. It is not uncommon for these to have a set index for authors and then another set for titles, etc. Sometimes you will find what they call a combined index that does something like authors and titles together. These are still done alphabetically, they just combine the two. It looks kind of weird the first time, but after that you get to understand them. Okay, moving on. For this index, we start by looking at the user's guide to understand what we will be seeing. Then we look for Samuel Clemens. Well, everyone so far has referenced back to that name, so we'll just start there. Well, guess what? In this index, he's listed as Mark Twain, proving that you can't just do one. Once we get to Mark Twain, we see all of his entries for this set. Well, not all, because I've cropped some of them out so you could actually read the entries. Let's take the first one. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, reviewed in the Missouri Historical Review, volume 37 from 1943 on page 238. And at this point, just as with any index like this, you would then go and look up the Missouri Historical Review, see where we had it and if we had it, go pull the microfilm reel, look at it in the microfilm machine, or interlibrary loan the article. Well, that was a quick introduction into indexes. There are lots more of them and actually several other ways that they can be organized. Just remember that they are organized in some way. There is a key somewhere in the set. Whether it be in the front of every book or only in the front of the first volume of the set, there is one somewhere and it will tell you how to read the entries. Research at this level and beyond is daunting. It's hard, it's frustrating beyond belief, and most importantly, it is fun. You will understand that when you get the answer to your first circular research question. When you've dug through indexes and microfilm and back through countless books to find something that maybe no one else has, that's when this will all make sense. But until then, and even after, there is a librarian and a professor here to help teach you this.